So today we speak to my good friend, Andrea Crabtree from FurPaw Consulting. She talks about the paella of having a discussion in human resources because there are so many different personalities and perspectives coming together when you're speaking about things that need to get done or need to change, recognizing that perspectives are like the spices of a paella. They're all different. So come with me. Let's hear what Andrea has to say. Hi, I'm Deborah Hamilton. Welcome to my podcast, Why Do Pets Matter? 10 years ago, with my iPhone and a script, I recorded the first episode of the Ultimate Pet Resolution Summit, which chatted with experts about conflicts over animals. Our conversations were intimate, honest, and illustrated how disagreements over animals occur and how those disagreements can reshape people's lives and relationships. In November 2019, I started Why Do Pets Matter, a new podcast that continued these informative discussions. I'm so excited to have you here with me, continuing my exploration into a more meaningful conversation about why pets matter to all of us. My guests and I will share ideas, stories, and experiences straight from the heart, unscripted and holistic. From the bravest moments to the most brokenhearted, we will explore how to resolve disagreements over animals differently. One thing I know for sure is I want to have more meaningful conversations that will help all of us unlock that deeply felt human-animal bond that drives the emotions of conflict. Hi, everyone. I am so glad to have my dear friend, Andrea Crabtree here. She is the founder and owner of FurPaws, which is a veterinary business consulting firm that helps teams strive to do their best from start to finish. So, Andrea, thank you so much for being here on Why Do Pets Matter?
Thank you, Deborah, for having me on the show. I'm excited to hang out with you for the next little bit.
I know. I mean, it's just been so long that we've tried to do this and our schedules are getting, discombobulated, but now we're here. And of course, I'm going to ask you the one question I ask everyone. Why do pets matter to you?
That is a loaded question. No wonder you ask all your guests that could spend hours going down the rabbit hole, right? So why do pets matter? For me, my experience, I grew up with pets my whole entire life. I got to nurse back to health some very sick and unusual pets. My dad was married to a police officer, and we lived out on a farm in the middle of nowhere in a rural area. And we got the drop off from local humane society for, I'll say, patients that they couldn't keep from other hospitals or the humane society. So we got some really weird animals that I got to rehab. And that, I guess, caring for and nurturing all kinds of unusual critters gave me a passion for pets. So my whole life has been nursing the broken. I wouldn't say necessarily pets because a great horned owl is not necessarily a pet, and that was one of my favorites, but they were pets to me. So nursing pets my whole life has really been my focus of um, has helped me develop who I am, my character, the direction of my life, and where I've taken my professional career as well as my personal passions. But definitely has taken my professional career has been built on caring and nurturing the broken and the injured. That's why
I
pets
love
matter to me.
I love that because it's so important to understand the commitment we make to these animals, whether they're domesticated or not domesticated. It seems as if you are just as committed to the non-domesticated, the horned owl, who is your best friend or one of your favorite animals, as well as puppies or kittens who might have walked through.
Sure. Yeah. And I remember even we had two really large snakes. We had a boa python, and it was huge. And he was trapped in a cage and teased with food. And so he would strike the side of the cage, even though there would be no food there. And so the whole front of his face was completely had sores all over it, and they were infected, and it was horrible. So when we nursed him back to health, we actually had to then raise in turn mice and rats to feed him. And so even though I had feeder rats and feeder mice, those were still like, I would be out there caring for them, making sure they had fresh food and water. And my dad was like, but they're going to get eaten, right? I'm like, yes, I'm not naming them. They're not my pets, but they're still pets. They're still, to me, they were my pets, and I raised them for a purpose. And that segued into when we raised our own food. So which pig we were allowed to name and which pig we weren't. And if the pig we weren't allowed to name it ended up in pink wrapper in our freezer. But it was that same thought process of, but it's going to be a feeder pig, right? Yes, but it still deserves the same life that any other pig deserves, or any other mouse or rat deserves. It still deserves fresh water and fresh food and fresh bedding and some cuddles and kisses, and that's it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the end goal is of that pet's life. It matters. That pet mattered to me, and it was my pet, even though some would say like it's only a pet if you keep it around to, I don't know, lay on a dog bed or something. Maybe not. Even a feeder rat was my pet.
I love the fact that you always chose to make their lives whole. I mean, Roger Karras says pets might not be my whole life, but they make my lives whole. And so the time you spent with them was really good for them and good for you. And even if they did end up in pink wrapper in the freezer, their time on earth was appreciated, acknowledged, well cared for, good food, good water. And well, although there's a lot of rhetoric about whether or not we should eat animals or not, that's not this podcast. Sorry, guys. Being there to care for them and make them feel loved, respected, and understood while they were here. Animals, I wish humans would be a little more like animals. I mean, live in the moment. So they
Right.
loved
Yeah.
that you were feeding them. They loved that you
Right.
were caring for them, that you were talking to them, whether you were caring, calling them by name or just here, piggy. Uh,
Yeah.
you know, the fact that the cortisol in their body was really low.
Yeah, and they didn't need to know what their end goal was, right? They lived in the moment. They were happy for the time that they were here. They didn't know when it was going to end or why or anything else with it. So,
And you
yeah,
appreciate that, celebrate their lives, and I'm a firm believer in, I guess I justify, and there's arguments for that as well. However, I think if we make everyone's life respected and well cared for, then there's a mission. We're all going to come here. We're all going to, move on. But you started with rehabilitating animals. I'd love to hear more about the snake's face. How did you ever put salve on a bull python's face? Don't pythons bite?
very carefully. Not necessarily. Yeah, very carefully. They don't bite per se unless they're trying to strike food. So as long as you don't smell like a rat or food, then they don't necessarily bite. So
Of course,
holding them
taking
out.
care of their mice and their things might make you smell like them. So you could
And
be
very carefully, because I know at the time my dad, his ex-wife had done that. She was in messing with their food and then went in to change his where he was, his bedding, if you will, and he did bite her and wrap up her arm, and that's because, right, she smelled like food, she smelled like prey. So we learned to do it the other way, right? You care for the snake first and then go care for the food. So and you wash carefully and you can't smell like anything. So you learn that, but that's part of nurturing and caring for pets, right? Is making sure how to do it appropriately. So yeah, that salve is pretty easy. Rub it on there as long as you don't smell like mice, then they're not going to try to eat you. It's all
and you're
good.
good. Then you're good. So this was a perfect setup for where you, I guess, navigated from animal care into the veterinary world. I know you did. And then navigated to helping and caring for veterinarians as a consultant in the business world.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a people person. I'm an extrovert. Uh, so for me, getting into veterinary medicine was a no brainer as far as the animal side of it. My undergrad's in animal health science from Cal Poly, and my family was 100% knew from. I wasn't going to be a veterinarian. Like you'll hear a lot of veterinarians say, I want to be a veterinarian since birth. Like that was not my goal. It was to be in with animals. I didn't care what that looked like. So the more I got invested into the veterinary profession, and then being an extrovert and a people person, I started realizing that I love caring about people just as much as caring about pets. And the more I climbed up the leadership ladder, I learned the people that were taking care of pets don't take care of themselves. And so the more I can help them and teach them how to better care for themselves, whether that's professional growth so that they're caring for their patients better, or personal growth, and they're taking mental health and physical health, taking care of themselves so that they can in turn take better care of their patients. My mantra is 100% of my job is to make you better at yours. So whatever that looks like, right? If you need professional development to care for your patients better, or you need to learn how to care for yourself better, so that in turn you can care for your patients better. So that was a big transition for me when I moved away from hands-on, being an animal caretaker, into the space of management and managing people. It was a big shift for me to say, like, oh, now I have to deal with people and they're icky, sticky, smell like parvo. Like, oh, thanks, right? But I do enjoy it. I enjoy caring for people. I enjoy caring for pets. Pets will always be my passion. I spend more time scooping poop and smelling poop, outside with my horse, or scooping poop in the backyard from the dogs. Like, I get more joy from just poop, right?
You and I both.
Right, than I get from sometimes spending with people. But that's, it brings me joy, and I think knowing that I'm leaving my profession better than I found it is fulfilling for me.
It's so interesting because not a lot of people choose to spend a lot of time helping other people find their best path forward, both as professionals and personally, because, that takes a lot of energy and commitment. How did you navigate this and start FurPaws, so that you could then gently, but competently help people be their best selves?
When I became a CVP, I'm a certified veterinary practice manager. I had a lot of friends and colleagues in the profession that were reaching out to me asking for help. You're a practice manager, like, you're certified, you know what you're doing. Can you help me with my practice? And they were practice owners, they were potential managers, supervisors, all kinds of associates, all kinds of different people asking for help with their practices. And so I was doing that kind of on the side for free, if you will, like helping friends out. And then it got to be more and more and more where I figured out, oh, I could actually do this as a business. So I transitioned away from being a practice manager and into consulting. And it was still helping practices have better patient care, right? Whatever it looked like to provide better patient care. And then it turned into managing people a little bit better. And from managing people, that's when I learned I didn't know jack shit about people. So I had to do a bunch of HR training and figure out, like, oh, people,
Yeah, you
again,
can't
icky,
say
sticky, smell
that.
like
Sorry.
parvo. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. So then learning how to help practices manage people better, right? And I learned that for myself, I have this intrinsic reward and joy and happiness from seeing someone that I have mentored blossom into this whatever, right? This veterinary professional. And typically it's women, we're a profession of 80% women. So I see this woman turn into a Wonder Woman, right? That she's a great mom, she's a great wife, she's a great manager, she's a great coworker, she's whatever it may be. And I helped her, held her hand, gave her resources, coached her, along the way. And in turn, she was then, managing a team of 5 or 10 or 50 at her practice doing the same thing, right? So I see, like, wow, look at the reach I have from having a team of being a practice manager, I have a team of, 25 to 50 myself. And now I have a team of 50 different practices across the country. And each of those practice owners or managers now have a team of 5 or 50 themselves. And so I see a reach that's significantly more broad than it was as me being a single practice manager and mentoring people along the way. And I love that because I'm a maven. So I want to share my knowledge. I want to share my experience. And if I can tie it back to, we are helping patients, whatever that looks like, right? If I'm helping you create an employee manual or training manual, or learning how to figuring out how to pay your people better, that in turn makes better veterinary technicians, right? Or it makes better kennel assistants or better associates or CSRs or whatever that looks like. And so they're caring for clients and they're caring for patients. So the bottom line is, to me, then pets are getting better care because the people that care for them are just better people.
That's so important because they have to really recognize who they are first, I think, and what their temperament and personality is. And before we got on, we were talking about some part of electronics and other things. And I said, yes, I know my magnificence. So helping them know what they're really good at, and then helping them get the help to do what it is they're not necessarily good at.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't understand that. They don't hear it. They don't know it. There's a large portion of our profession, I forget the percentage, but it's really, really big, that are choose our profession because they are physically, emotionally abused, mentally, physically, or spiritually abused. And so there's some secondary stress that's in there, that I can care for my patient because I don't have a voice to care for myself. So I'll be the voice of my patient, right? And when that happens, then we get team members that are beaten up and abused physically, right? Emotionally, spiritually, mentally. And so what they're doing then is caring for patients, but not caring for themselves. And so we get a lot of beaten up people. And then COVID, man, it kicked us in the teeth. I mean, it was rough for our profession. And I think just acknowledging that, even, the conferences I speak at, when I talk about how, beat up we got during COVID, people are like, yeah, no one ever said that about us. They said about doctors and nurses, or all these, professions that
Because you
absolutely,
all
but
were
they forget about us.
necessary workers, right?
Essential workers.
Essential
Yeah.
workers,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Frontline workers. And, we we don't know how to say no. We just keep seeing cases, right? And so in healthcare workers, the same thing, right? We don't know how to say no. So we're just seeing these cases, and it kicked us in the teeth, right? And I see a lot of PTSD coming from, especially out of COVID, where there could have been some suppressed feelings there, and that exasperated things. And I see a lot of people in our profession that are just beat up, right? And so it's, do you know what you are? Do you see that you might be a lump of coal, but underneath there is a diamond and it needs polishing? And so let's do the work, right? Let's do the work, and let's see what we can find. Let's dig through the BS and see what we can find under there and polish it and give you some training and some support and resources, and let you shine as a diamond that you are, right?
It's so I love that because in the world of conflict that I work in, being able to have people self-reflect on what they're good at and what they're not good at and how they're feeling when something's coming up is often really difficult, because they always project on you, that you were wrong or that you don't know what
Mm-hmm.
you're doing. And yet
Yeah.
it seems in your profession, you really have them, take a step back, ground themselves, really identify what they're good at and what they'd like to do and what they might need coaching on or
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, training or education,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can then aspire to be even better.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely is a lot of like, what do you love? Why do you love that? What, are you good at it? Do you suck at it? That's okay. If you love doing it and you suck, let's get you good at it, right? If you love doing it, right? And then what's the stuff that you don't love? And some of it we got to do, right? We just got to do because it's a part of, nobody likes picking up poop. But we got to do it. It's part of, our job, right? Okay, that's fine. And then there's things that's like you don't like, play technicians that don't care for dentistry, right? You don't actually have to extract teeth. Then get somebody else to do it, right? Don't work for a board certified dentist. Then that's not the job for you, right? You don't like working with people? Great. Let's get you, where are you comfortable working with people? How about one-on-one on a phone call, right? Are you comfortable working on maybe one-on-one with a client? We have a lot of introverts in our profession. So, they get a little worried about having phone calls or unexpected questions or different things. So how can we control that, right? How can we prepare you and get you confident in something you may not be great at? And can you just be good at it and then be really great at the stuff that you're really great at?
So I'm so
Yeah.
glad you brought that up because I think during COVID, many people got animals because they were home for a year. Some of them may or may not have been good pet owners. And now, and the fact that the veterinary industry changed the way it delivered services.
Hmm.
I know 2 or 3 vets that are still meeting people outside, not letting
Hmm.
them
Yep.
in.
Yeah.
And it seems so foreign to me, and I'm sure it seems foreign to you, that you don't have the pet owner in the room or in the office. listening to them, hearing what they have to say, asking them curious questions. But as you said, a number of veterinarians are more introverts and not extroverts,
Hmm.
as are people who might work in the veterinary field. So
Hmm.
that interacting with clients would be the last thing they choose to do. They'd rather pick up the poop.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I have a lecture that's called "Talking with Your Team." I'd rather play with poop. Like, no thanks. No thanks. Right. Yeah, and it's true. And so, how can we control that anxiety? How can we make them the most comfortable that they possibly can be in what they would consider an uncomfortable situation, right? So how can we help control that? There's some coaching techniques that we can do to help people feel comfortable. This is our chosen profession, and we can't lose them because we're losing people left and right in our profession. We have a shortage of veterinarians. Like, the technician shelf life is 5 to 7 years. Like, we got to keep the ones
Yeah,
that are
they'd
in our
rather go to
profession,
Starbucks, much less emotional, things around
right?
Starbucks than
Yeah.
you get paid the same.
Right. Yeah, if not more. Right. So we're not known for paying a lot of money in our profession. So how
No,
can we
not
keep them? And yeah, as much as possible, right? Retention is key. How do we keep them?
well, because people with experience, I often give a talk about, retention over, because I know that a number of my wonderful colleagues in the veterinary field say, well, if you have a toxic person in the practice, just get rid of them, either an owner, a pet owner, or a member of the staff. And I go, yes. And how much is that going to cost you to replace?
Right. Yeah. And can we coach it out of them? A lot of times employees want to be heard. A client wants to be heard. So can we set some parameters around how that conversation sounds, right? There's no yelling, there's no cussing, there's no pointing fingers, there's, that kind of thing. Can we put some parameters around that? And then can we go ahead and have a conversation and let your voice be heard and then move with some action out of that conversation, right? So although they may be toxic, I would challenge you to say, why are they toxic? Right? Is
There's
there a lack of
something going on.
accountability? Yeah,
And
right. You're 100% right. There's
there's
something
something
there.
going
So,
on. And I often say when a few of my wonderful colleagues go, just fire them. And I go, well, you're taking the culture with you. So whatever fed that, personality within your culture is still there. And unless
yeah,
you take a deep dive, like you said, and
yeah,
ask the client, what went wrong, and actually just listen and don't defend. I know you probably speak about this, listen
yeah,
and don't defend, and appreciate that they gave you their honest observation.
yeah,
You might not agree with anything they say. However,
right.
if you listen to them and appreciate and acknowledge, I think you probably find this within the practice. And of course, I give a course where, team has to include the client, because without bringing them in, the cost of veterinary care, the time you wait for veterinary care, the kind of veterinary care you're giving is lost because of the lack of transparency.
Yeah, yeah. I always say listen with intent to understand, not with intent to respond.
Yeah.
So, shut your trap. God gave me two ears and one mouth, and I'm constantly arguing about that. Like, what are you thinking, God?
Yeah. What do you think? I
But
should
there's
have
a
three mouths.
reason.
Yeah. Well, I use duct tape. So I always, when I'm doing a mediation or I'm having a conversation with some people, I always use duct tape, and they have really cute duct tape now with, seals and fish and
Yes.
pigs and things. And I go, it's really cute, but let somebody finish. And I'm sure you work on that as
Yeah.
well, giving
Yeah.
your clients that you're consulting with, first of all, you give them time to tell their story, and you
Yeah.
don't, comment
And
on
that's
it.
important. They need to be heard. Yeah. Yeah.
And something you said before that really was impactful to me, because I do mentorship as well. And I love to ask you how much it helps you grow to be a mentor.
Yeah. One thing I find hard is, as a consultant, nobody is doing a performance review on me. Right. And so I tend to struggle with, I can meet expectations. I can outline, I can meet, I can measure, I can say, look at all these KPIs, we're doing fantastic. Yes, I can do that, but that doesn't necessarily give a review, a performance review, if you will, on me. So even though we can meet metrics, that's fine. Like, absolutely. I'm yes, that's part of it. But how am I performing as a consultant? Right. And And my mom always says that a stranger is a friend I haven't met yet. And so I'll just meet them and then we'll be besties in just a minute, right? I don't know. I guess that goes. My mom always says a friend is a stranger I haven't met yet. I don't know. However that saying goes. Anyway, just means that I befriend people very easily. So even as a consultant, I end up tend to be friends with my clients in that sense and build a good relationship. So I feel like, okay, well, that's good. That's good feedback as a consultant, as far as like my clients like me and I'm likable and but then I think, that's still like that's not a performance indicator on my end. So I do struggle with how do I, as a consultant who doesn't necessarily have, I'm owner, right? How do I get feedback from my clients? So I started soliciting some feedback from my clients and saying, hey, I'd really appreciate, I'm going to send you a few questions. Would you answer honestly? Because I need to grow, right? I love seeing people grow. I love when a manager that I've been mentoring takes a CVPM exam and passes, or gets a promotion at work, or learns a new concept, or doesn't need me anymore because they've grown so much. I love that. And that is intrinsic rewards, and it makes me, warm and fuzzy inside. And I still want more. I still want more than KPIs, more than quote friendship, more than right seeing somebody else succeed. I still am craving, what can I do to help my profession more? What can I do to grow? Where can I invest more into me, which in turns and invest into my clients, which then in turn, invest into better patient care. Where is it that I can grow as a person? So I'm constantly doing that introspective looking within, trying to find out what my blind spots are. A lot of emotional intelligence, self-aware, self-regulation. What am I doing that I could be doing better?
And that's such an important thing to do, both as a member of a team and a consultant coming in to help a team, because it makes for the feeling that this is a collaborative effort. Because I'm going to learn from you, and I'm sure this has happened to you a number of times because it happens to me. Well, that's not how we do things. And then, of course, we ask the curious question. We don't tell them, well, you should because practice sucks because you don't. Never get anybody to do anything you want to do if you tell them their practice sucks because they don't.
Right.
You really just say, well, tell me a little bit more about, and then ask a curious question.
Yeah. Right.
And people say to me, so why is mediation so important? And I go, because I allow them to get there. And I'm sure you allow your clients to get there. We give them information, but not in a way that you need to do this.
Yeah.
Rather, you know, tell me how that worked for you, and could you
Yeah.
think of a
Right.
different way to do it?
Yeah.
Because in my neck of the woods, they'll say, well, Deborah told me I should take the deal. And I'm like, shit, that's never what I want someone to say. I
Whoops, that
never
didn't come out
want them
right.
to say that, right?
Yeah.
I want them to say, we struggled, we talked, and we both came, meaning the parties, to
Mhm.
a conclusion. And what I'm hearing you say is, I give information, and then when these people take the information, assimilate it the way they can, and then successfully, you know, climb up the rungs of a ladder that they're looking to climb up, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah, and I would definitely say I struggle. I worked for corporate for a while, and I really struggled with that because I felt like corporate was black and white. And I say like, hey, medicine is gray. Every case is gray. People are gray. Every person is different. Every experience you have with a person is going to be different. Every experience with a patient is going to be different. And yes, you can say, well, most ear infections, blah blah blah, right? Most people, blah blah blah. Okay, that's fine. However, there's still a gray piece in veterinary medicine, and that's with our medicine and with our people. So I corporate for me felt like an itchy wool sweater because it was forcing me to react the same way in every situation, and I just don't feel that way. And whether it was on the floor, working with a doctor in a case, or behind a closed door working with an employee working on something, it's not black and white, it's gray. And so yes, when we talk through something, I want every single I want all of my the people I work with, whether it's a practice owner, a manager, or even the support team. When I'm working with them, I want them to feel that same way, Deborah, where we say, wow, we talked about it, we worked through it, we came up with this, and we decided this is the best solution for right now. And we're going to move forward with this agreement in mind, whatever that looks like. And we'll reevaluate that, because although we chose this, what feels right, what seems right, it may not be. And we may hit some bumps along the road. So we may have to pivot, right? Make a few changes. But for the most part, we think this is going to be work. We poke some holes in it. We tried to be the devil's advocate. Where's our obstacles going to be? We tried to address that. But for the most part, we came up with this decision as a team, and this is what we're going to do and how we're going to move forward. And if we need to reevaluate, like, that's okay. It's not black and white. It's gray.
Well, I always say it's like a rainbow, because everyone is totally a different color. Maybe shades of gray on the spectrum. There are 455 shades of gray. I of course am very colorful, although not today. In that I think everybody brings their own spice to the soup.
Absolutely.
And just because your spice is different than mine doesn't mean that it's not going to work as well. And giving people the ability to feel agency in a practice, which is what you're doing, so that they can stand up and say, listen, I'm watching this happen, and I think if we did it this way, it might work better. Not feeling threatened if, say, you're the manager, but rather fostering that input. Because if we include the team as a team and give everybody the agency and security and trust that they can speak up and say, hey, I see us doing this way. And I think maybe if we do it the other way, even if you answer them, well, let me think about it. And you don't act in the next day or two or a month or two. Don't forget it. Remind them that you're thinking about
we
it.
circle back and say, hey, I've been chewing on this, right? I'm still thinking about this. And I realize as a manager, one of the most important things for me to do is follow up and to circle back. I learned that in practice many, many, many moons ago, in a feedback evaluation from a practice owner that says you're lacking follow through. And so people think that you aren't, heeding their advice or listening to them or taking action or whatever. I'm like, I totally finished that, but they don't know that. So
Right.
following up, circling back,
Transparency.
finishing that loop. Yeah, it's coming back and saying, like,
It's huge. It's huge. And that
yeah,
happens with clients as well, because if they ask you or tell you or, suggest something, I often have clients who are upset with their veterinary practice. And I say to the veterinary practice, just listen to them and say, you've got some great ideas here. Give us a few minutes. And as you said, you have to follow up and say, well, a lot of times, when I mediate difficulties between veterinary practices and clients, all they need to do is include the client in what they find is a good solution or a good next step. And the client is thrilled because they're included. It may or may not be what they suggested. However, they feel
their voice was heard.
and I think as a consultant, who you're doing a phenomenal job of giving everyone the ability to feel noticed and respected. And isn't that what all of us want? And going back to the beginning, where you took care of these injured and not doing so well animals, not to equate that with the staff, but unless you take a thermometer check of the temperature of everyone in your practice, somebody could be having a fever and you don't know it.
Yeah, 100%. I absolutely agree.
Isn't that the scariest thing to do?
It's right, but it's
tell me what's
so
going
helpful.
right and tell me what's going wrong, and then
it's so helpful because before it turns into this, hospitalization, abscess, horrible, like, right?
and
Don't let
they
it get
have
that big.
Yeah, they have to feel they can. Okay, Andrea, this is what I'm feeling right now. And they have to feel that you're going to
Psychological safety in there.
Oh my
It's okay
God,
to talk about it.
the psychological safety, and the agency to feel that you really do want to hear what I have to say, because the worst, and I'm sure you've been in a few practices, the worst practices are the ones I always ask what goes on. And if you ask the staff, a lot of times I'll go in, and you've probably had this happen as well. I'll go in and the vet goes, okay, fix the staff.
Right. I hear it all the time. It just cracks me up, right?
Yeah.
There's
And I'm
nothing
like,
wrong with them, actually. They're not
and
broken.
I can sit, and I usually say to the staff when I'm there, I said, okay, so tell me what you're thinking, what you're feeling, and tell me what needs to be fixed. And everybody raises their hand and says, we need the vet to listen to us. We need
Yeah,
the
right.
vet to
Can you
listen
fix
to us.
him?
Yeah, fix him, fix her, right? And I sit there and as you said, and I agree, the IQs of veterinarians are off the charts. The EQs aren't necessarily their magnificence
Yes,
because they're
right.
introverts and they don't necessarily want to do much more than navigate. And yet, if someone like you can help give them the courage to have a question and have you help them answer those questions and really be a mentor. And then, as you and I both commented before we got on, we learn so much from every experience we go through
Yeah,
because,
for sure.
what we're doing for practice A didn't work for practice B. Why not? And what can I do better?
Yeah, and they're not cookie cutters. What I've realized is every single practice is a unicorn practice. Every single practice is different because they have different people, and that's the spice. That's the flavor of the practice. So every culture is different. Everything is different. I can give you a solution. We can implement that solution, but it's not going to be the same as the last 5 practices I implemented in, even though the base of it is going to be the same. We're going to add different spice and flavor to it, and it's going to taste different because it's just different. It's a different practice. It rolls out different, looks different, feels, touch, taste, sounds, all the things. And that's what I love, right? Going into 50 different practices, and seeing it done 50 different ways and it's successful, it's fine.
Yep.
It's great. It's perfect. It's fantastic because that
And you
practice rolled it
wouldn't.
out their own way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the paella of practice, right? Everybody makes a different kind of paella. It's very
Hmm.
spicy, it's not so spicy, or a
Hmm.
jambalaya, right? It has sausage, andouille sausage, it doesn't have andouille sausage.
Right. Right.
When you're putting these things together, both as a veterinarian in a practice that may not be functioning as well as they'd like, don't be afraid to call somebody in to take, the 360-degree look. And and I know this. If you don't feel it in your gut that what someone's telling you to do is what you want to do, then find somebody else who speaks your language,
It's got to be
or
the right fit. Yeah.
gotta be the right fit, or be curious and say, I wonder why you're suggesting this, tell me more. Because
Hmm.
sometimes the way a consultant might speak to someone might be in a way that isn't conducive to understanding. And so if you don't like what you're hearing, don't walk away. Be a little more curious. Be that
Yeah.
rainbow. Yeah. Be that
Yeah. And
spicy.
I tell my clients when I'm first doing my, first initial call with them, I tell them I'm a lot, I'm loud, I'm intense, I'm strong-willed, I'm stubborn, I've got a loud voice, I'm a big girl, big arms, big voice, I'm a lot and I'm intense. And people tell me that. And it's because I'm so passionate, I can't help myself. But if that is too much for you, that's fine. I totally get it. You just gotta say, and I'll turn it down if I can. And I remember right after COVID, I was staying with my father in Texas at the time for about 3 or 4 months when my stepmom got really sick and had died of COVID. And I was staying with them and helping them. And my dad was listening to quite a few of my calls that I had when I was working from his house remotely. And he says, I really like the fact that you would explain something once and then you would ask for them to give it back to you. And then if they didn't get it, you explained it a different way and a different way and a different way until there was an aha moment and a light bulb went off. And he said, and sometimes you would get more intense and sometimes less intense. And sometimes you would, do it this way and do it that way. And he says, I appreciated that about you, that you've learned how to figure out if your clients are receiving what you're trying to tell them. And if not, that I could change my delivery. So, and to put it in a different term to say, let's try it this way. How about this way? What about this way? So that we could almost manipulate it as it would go, or whatever it was, a topic was like we needed to change it or add this or do that. But also my delivery style was like, all right, that didn't go over well. So let's fix it and try it a different way. And then we're also going to, add a few spices in here and try this and see if it was more palatable, this way. And I was like, oh, Dad, that's kind of cool that he got to experience me at work. Our parents don't always get to experience us at work. And that was kind of cool. And of course, the father-daughter talk. I'm so proud of you, that kind of thing. But it was. I didn't realize I was doing that until he had pointed that out to me. Kind of goes back to like wanting a performance review, right? Of like, how am I doing? And I thought, oh, that's cool that I realized that about myself. That I am not always everybody's cup of tea, and that's okay. And I don't need to be. I'm not going to change who I am per se, but sometimes I do need to tone it down, or sometimes I need to turn it up, or sometimes I need to be more firm or less firm, depending on the person on the receiving end. And I think that's a lot to do with self-awareness. I know I can be intense when I go into an exam room to talk to somebody who's quiet and meek and doesn't like confrontation, or to be in sticky situations or one-on-ones, or can feel intimidated. I know I have to turn myself down. I have to bring myself in. I have to quiet my voice. I have to give open body posture. So there's some things that I know I have to do in order to be well received by the person on the other end. And I think we miss that often in veterinary medicine. We are a bull in a china shop, and we want to get our point across. And oftentimes I think it's because we're so busy. There's always another patient. Always. It never stops. There's always another patient coming in the door.
Yeah.
And so we don't stop to realize, are we communicating the right way to the other person, whether it's a client, whether it's a coworker, whoever it may be, are we communicating the way that they need to be heard, that they need to be listened to, the way that works for them? And it hurts us a lot. We upset clients and team members more than we should, because we don't have enough self-awareness of that.
And self-awareness is probably the greatest thing to bring to the table. And it has to start with you. I mean, it has to start with me too. I have to be aware of what I'm bringing to the table. You're aware of what you're bringing to the table.
Sure.
And by showing self-awareness, you help others become aware of themselves, because that really is the way in which to diffuse any difficult situation, is to know what triggers you,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to recognize that and either take a step back, or
Mm-hmm. Right.
take a break, or
Take a beat. That's
yeah,
right.
or ask a curious question. So my curious question is, Andrea, how can people find you? Because I know that after this podcast, people are going to want to find you to help them locate someone who's going to help them bring their practice up to its full potential.
Well, I would say the normal regular ways that I would reach out to people would be on LinkedIn, on their website, or email. So those would be Andrea Crabtree at LinkedIn. FurPawsConsulting.com is my website. Email is Andrea@furpaws.us.
Perfect.
And I would love to connect with anybody that has more questions, or wants to follow up, or have a conversation about why pets matter to them. Love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm so glad you were here. I can't wait to post this wonderful discussion, because I think people really don't understand the benefits of having someone come in and help them look at what's going right, and then
Well,
what.
nobody likes to like peel back the rug and show the dirt.
I
Like,
know.
come into my house and look at all the dirty the dirty
Right.
spots. I'm
You
like,
just come in.
trust me, I've seen worse. It's fine. Like, let's get it cleaned up.
Yeah, let's get it cleaned up. And it is cleanable. It isn't, this stain that's going to stay there forever. No, some
No.
peroxide, you're good to go.
Yeah. Think of me as the housekeeper, I guess, right? Your housekeeper doesn't care how dirty your house is. Like, let me just clean it up for you. It's fine. Fine.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, I hope you will reach out to Andrea. She is such a delight, and she is such a help to your practice. And until next time, this is Deborah Hamilton, and kiss your pets for me, because they certainly matter. Take care.